In this video, we explore the quiet tension of facing one's own fears, the gentle reflection of past choices, and the soft discovery of self-understanding. Rick lies awake in his lab, the faint hum of machines beneath him like a lullaby that knows no urgency. The lights from blinking consoles are soft, almost timid, casting pale glows across the cluttered workbench, across beakers, vials, and scattered tools. Everything is familiar, yet different tonight, like the moment just before waking from a half-remembered dream. There is a flicker in the corner of his vision, a shadow moving just beyond recognition. It seems alive but untouchable, like a memory brushing past the edge of thought. Rick blinks slowly, his breath even, yet his mind feels the tug of that quiet presence. Morty sits a few feet away on the couch, draped in a blanket that smells faintly of old fabric and the warmth of the ship. He watches Rick's stillness with soft attentiveness, saying nothing, not wanting to break the fragile atmosphere. He senses the weight of a moment that is both ordinary and strange, a time suspended between heartbeat and universe. The machines hum a gentle rhythm, like the breathing of the world itself, and the shadows on the walls seem to stretch, shrink, and sway with the tempo. Rick's eyes move with the light, tracing patterns he cannot name, yet somehow understands. There is a whisper in the air, something too soft for words, almost like a sigh, and Morty feels it too. It threads through the lab, through the hum of the ship, curling around the corners, brushing past the edges of consciousness. Rick leans back in his chair, one arm draped over the console, the other loose at his side, feeling the weight of the shadow without trying to touch it, without trying to solve it. It is there, and that is enough. The lab, cluttered and chaotic in the daylight hours, now feels spacious and quiet, as if every tool and device is holding its breath along with him. Morty shifts slightly, curling his knees closer, feeling the soft texture of the blanket and the pulse of calm from Rick's presence. The shadow flickers again, and Rick notices it without looking, like recognizing a friend in the corner of a crowded room. There is no fear, only a strange intimacy, the kind that comes from knowing that the unknown can be gentle. He exhales slowly, and the machines hum along deep and steady, filling the gaps between the moments. Outside, the stars stretch endlessly, glimpsed through the small porthole at the side of the lab. Their distant light is quiet, ancient, and they seem to lean in just slightly, listening. Morty glances at them and imagines that they, too, are witnesses to the same gentle tension, the same quiet introspection that fills the lab. Rick shifts his gaze toward the corner where the shadow has been moving, but now it is barely there, more suggestion than shape, like smoke in moonlight. He doesn't need to name it, doesn't need to chase it. It is enough to acknowledge its presence, to feel it without fear, and to allow it to be. Morty notices the subtle change in Rick's posture, the softening of his shoulders, the stillness of his hands. The boy understands, in that wordless way only he can, that something has passed between them, a quiet sharing of the unseen, the internal, the shadows we all carry. The lab remains bathed in its soft glow, shadows retreating to the edges, leaving the heart of the space open, safe, unhurried. The hum of machinery becomes a lullaby, the whisper of shadow a story told in silence. Rick finally closes his eyes for a brief moment, a subtle nod to the calm that has entered the room. Morty curls a little more into the blanket, letting sleep begin to weave through him, feeling the gentle pulse of life around him and the steady, familiar rhythm of the man beside him. In this shared stillness, neither needs to speak, neither needs to act. The shadow remains, but it is no longer an intruder. It is simply part of the night, part of the breathing, part of the space where curiosity and reflection meet, a quiet reminder that the self is both companion and mystery. Rick and Morty remain there in soft illumination, in quiet recognition of each other and themselves, letting the gentle hush of the lab, the whispering shadow, and the hum of machines carry them into a peace that feels both fragile and eternal, the kind of calm that lingers like starlight on the edge of dreams. Morty drifts into sleep on the couch, wrapped in the quiet weight of the blanket and the hum of the lab, soft as a lullaby. Above him, the ceiling shimmers in the dim light of scattered monitors and blinking consoles, reflecting not only the room, but echoes of Rick himself. Multiple silhouettes hover faintly in the reflections, each one slightly different, as if the ceiling has captured every flicker of Rick's being. Morty sees them in a half-dream, noticing the subtle shifts. One Rick leans a little too far, another tilts his head, and yet another seems to dissolve into soft darkness. The room feels alive with gentle motion, a slow breathing of light and shadow, carrying a quiet sense of identity and introspection. Rick moves between benches and workstations, hands resting briefly on scattered tools, pauses mid-step as though listening to some internal rhythm. His eyes catch the soft glow of the ceiling reflections, and for a moment, his usual impatience softens into stillness. Morty watches, sensing that there is something unusual in Rick's gaze, a quiet attention toward parts of himself he rarely acknowledges. The room is familiar yet strange, the reflections amplifying the ordinary into a subtle meditation on what is and what could be. Light brushes the edges of the glassware, the shadowed corners, and the ceiling, casting gentle ripples across the walls. It is as if the lab itself is breathing, rising and falling, with a pulse only perceptible when the world slows enough to notice. Morty imagines the reflections as small universes of their own, each one holding a version of Rick, shaped by choices, fears, and moments of care. He wonders whether the man beside him is aware of these variations, whether he can see the soft patterns of kindness or oversight that drift through his life unseen. Rick pauses by a console, looking upward without focusing, eyes half closed, absorbing the silent presence of these spectral selves. The soft hum of machinery accompanies him like a heartbeat, steady and unhurried. Shadows sway lightly with the glow of the monitors, reaching across the room like slow, tender fingers. Morty allows himself to follow the rhythm, letting it settle over his thoughts, smoothing the edges of the day, the anxious flickers of memory. The ceiling reflects more than just light. It reflects time, choice, and quiet consequence. Morty dreams of stepping through those mirrored silhouettes, of reaching toward a version of Rick that smiles gently instead of frowning, that hesitates instead of dismissing, that sees without needing to fix. In that dream, the reflections whisper softly, sharing stories of actions unremembered, of small mercies hidden in chaos. Rick moves again, this time slower, more deliberate, almost as if he is moving to match the rhythm of these shadows, of the infinite tiny selves suspended above him. Morty notices a subtle warmth in Rick's expression, a brief acknowledgement that the world is larger and softer than the hurried calculations and inventions he often pursues. The light above shifts slowly, a gentle dance of shadow and reflection, and Morty imagines it as a bridge connecting the man he knows with the versions he has not yet met. The gentle shimmer of multiple Ricks is calming, almost like a quiet symphony played in color and stillness. Morty feels the soft hush of the lab seep into him, carrying away the tension of adventures past, the weight of uncertain futures. The reflections pulse lightly, in time with the quiet cadence of breathing and thought, creating a lullaby without melody, without song, only presence. Rick pauses beside a console, his hand brushing against a vial, feeling the cold glass and the soft vibration of power flowing beneath the lab surface. His gaze rises again to the ceiling, and Morty senses a shift, a quiet recognition in Rick that he is both the creator and observer of his life, that he can meet the shadows without fear. The multiple versions of himself are not enemies. They are echoes, reminders, gentle markers of growth and caution. Morty imagines the whispers between them, stories told in silence, the quiet understanding that comes from simply being seen. As Morty sleeps, the reflections ripple slowly, blending light and shadow, past and present, choice and consequence, in a dance that is calming, infinite, and tender. The hum of the machines settles into a soothing rhythm, carrying both of them into a shared stillness. Rick exhales, a long, soft release, and for the first time that night, he lets his shoulders sink fully into the present, absorbing the gentle echoes above him. Morty's breath deepens, softening further into sleep, and the ceiling mirrors above them continue their quiet, endless dance, holding the room in suspended tranquility. The lab feels alive yet peaceful, familiar yet subtly transformed by the gentle presence of reflection and introspection. Rick and Morty exist here in quiet awareness, each aware of the other's comfort without needing words. The shimmering ceiling holds their thoughts and memories like a soft tide, and Morty allows himself to be carried along, floating in the calm of observation, empathy, and gentle wonder. By the time Morty drifts fully into sleep, the room is bathed in soft light and shadow, a sanctuary of quiet contemplation where reflection becomes meditation and the self can be met without fear. In that suspended space, with the ceiling alive with light and shadow, Morty and Rick remain side by side, quietly learning from the reflections and from each other, embracing the gentle understanding that even the unseen parts of ourselves are safe, tender, and worthy of attention. The hum of the lab, the soft pulsing of light above, and the gentle sway of shadow carry them into a calm, reflective slumber, leaving warmth and peace behind like a slowly fading star. A portal opens silently in the lab, its edges shimmering with a soft, otherworldly glow that casts delicate ripples across the floor. Rick stops mid-step, staring at it with a gentle curiosity that is quieter than his usual restlessness. Morty sits nearby, wrapped in his blanket, noticing the shadows dance along the walls as the portal hums a low, soothing tone. The sound is almost like a lullaby, both a warning and a comfort, inviting careful attention without demanding action. The lab, once filled with the mechanical hum of machines, now carries the subtle vibration of something deeper, something unseen, and the air feels thick with quiet possibility. Morty watches Rick's movements closely, sensing a rare stillness in the man who normally rushes through every experiment and invention. Tonight, Rick's motions are deliberate, almost reverent, as though he recognizes the portal not only as a passage, but as a messenger from within. The room is bathed in soft light, the glow from the portal mingling with the dim illumination of scattered monitors and blinking consoles. Shadows stretch and bend gently across the walls, echoing with the rhythm of the hum, creating a living tapestry of light and dark. Morty notices the familiar objects of the lab, the tools, the scattered papers, the jars of strange chemicals, take on a new presence in this light. They are no longer mere instruments of invention. They are silent witnesses to something larger, something that requires attention beyond logic. Rick reaches out a hand, hovering near the portal, but not crossing the threshold. There is no urgency in his actions, only a careful, reflective pause. He inhales slowly, letting the quiet pulse of the lab and the soft resonance of the portal fill him. Feeling a gentle awareness that is both intimate and vast, Morty shifts slightly, hugging the blanket closer, as the edges of the portal shimmer and hum with a rhythm that seems almost alive. He watches the subtle movement of light, the way it bends and flickers like a living breath. In this calm, dreamlike state, he begins to sense that the portal is more than a doorway. It is a threshold of reflection, a mirror for thoughts, fears, and quiet truths that are often left unspoken. Rick's eyes linger on it, focused but soft, as if seeing not just the portal, but the paths it represents. The air carries a gentle tension, a space between expectation and understanding, and Morty feels himself drawn into it, not with fear, but with a sense of wonder and trust. The shadows on the floor move slowly, stretching toward the portal and receding in a gentle dance, as if acknowledging the delicate balance between presence and absence. Rick finally leans closer, his hand brushing the edge of the shimmering doorway, feeling a faint vibration that resonates through his bones. Morty notices the softness in his expression, the rare moment when the man's curiosity is tempered with care and quiet contemplation. The portal hums on, a soothing cadence that threads through the lab, tying together light, shadow, and breath. Morty allows himself to be still, feeling the subtle communication between Rick, the portal, and the room itself, sensing that this moment is less about action and more about observation, reflection, and the gentle awareness of possibility. The soft glow of the portal illuminates patterns on the floor and walls, reflecting off vials, tools, and monitors, creating a shimmering map of light that seems to pulse with unspoken stories. Morty imagines these patterns as whispers of memory and choice, small echoes of events that could have been and moments that might yet unfold. Rick moves along the edge, tracing his fingers over the surface of light and shadow, feeling the hum as if it carries the wisdom of countless unseen worlds. Morty's thoughts drift alongside him, noticing how the quiet interaction of light and dark, sound and silence forms a calm rhythm that resonates deep within. The lab feels suspended in this moment, a space of gentle meditation where neither time nor urgency exists, only the soft exploration of presence and understanding. As the portal hums, Morty sees the shadows bend around him, weaving patterns that seem to tell stories without words. He senses that the door is singing not for them to pass, but for them to listen. A soft reminder that sometimes observation, patience, and gentle awareness are the most profound forms of understanding. Rick leans back slightly, exhaling a long, quiet breath, and Morty notices the subtle relaxation in his shoulders. The man who usually carries the weight of infinite worlds has allowed himself to simply be here in quiet reflection, noticing the beauty of the unseen and the gentle truth of existence. The portal's glow begins to fade slowly, its edges softening into the familiar dim light of the lab. Shadows settle and curl back into corners, and the hum diminishes into the steady, comforting rhythm of the machines. Morty shifts, feeling the warmth of quiet connection, the safety of presence, and the gentle lessons of observation and patience. Rick watches the fading glow, a faint softness in his eyes, as if acknowledging that sometimes the most profound discoveries are not made through action, but through calm awareness, gentle attention, and shared stillness. The lab, now calm and intimate, holds them both in a quiet embrace of light, shadow, and reflection, and Morty allows sleep to pull him deeper into the gentle rhythm of the night, carried by the hum of machines, the echo of the portal, and the quiet presence of Rick beside him. In that suspended space, Morty and Rick share the silence, the reflection, and the subtle music of existence. No words are needed, no movement required. The lab itself becomes a sanctuary of calm, a soft chamber where understanding and awareness breathe alongside them. By the time Morty drifts fully into slumber, the room is a haven of light and shadow, a quiet reminder that some doors do not open to a new place, but to a new way of seeing, a softer, deeper connection to oneself and the ones we hold close. The portal fades completely, leaving behind only the gentle hum of the lab, the steady presence of Rick, and the warmth of quiet, meditative peace. Rick and Morty drift through space, not rushing, not chasing anything urgent, until they arrive at a world that seems to breathe slowly beneath the cosmic veil. The surface is an endless expanse of clouds that flow like gentle oceans, waves rising and falling in soft rhythm, reflecting distant starlight in muted silver and blue. Morty peers over the side of the ship, mesmerized, feeling a quiet awe that seems to pulse in the air itself. This planet is alive with soft motion, a slow dance of light and mist that invites patience, observation, and gentle wonder. It is both alien and familiar, like a memory half remembered in the haze of a dream. When they land, a being made entirely of mist drifts toward them. Its form is delicate and shifting, every movement subtle, flowing as if carried by invisible currents. It seems aware of their presence in a way that feels intimate, yet not intrusive. Morty notices the mist's glow, faint but steady, like a lantern in fog, illuminating not only its form, but the contours of the world itself. The being speaks in tones that ripple through the air, a language that resonates with memory rather than words.
"Every drop that falls here," it whispers,
"once belonged to someone's tear." Morty feels a quiet tremor in his chest, a soft ache for empathy he has yet to fully name. Rick stands nearby, unusually still, watching the mist with a curiosity tempered by calm observation. He touches one small wave of vapor, and it drifts through his fingers without resistance, leaving only a sense of connection. Morty notices the way Rick's eyes soften, the way his usually sharp features relax into contemplation. The planet itself hums quietly beneath their feet, a steady rhythm that seems to mirror the pulse of understanding that flows between them and the mist being. There is no urgency here, no danger, only the gentle unfolding of awareness, the recognition that every sorrow, every memory, is part of a larger,
living tapestry. Morty moves closer, his fingers brushing the soft surface of the cloud-like ocean, feeling it give way and then reform beneath his touch.
He imagines the stories carried in each droplet, the silent histories embedded in every shimmer of light. It is not sadness, nor is it longing. It is simply the presence of experience, flowing endlessly, shaping the contours of existence with quiet grace. Rick watches, understanding without needing words, the way empathy can bloom not through action, but through recognition and attention. Morty realizes in a still, luminous moment that listening is more profound than knowing, and that compassion often arrives in the spaces between understanding and judgment. The mist being glides closer, forming shapes that seem to echo past travelers, past sorrows and past joys. Morty sees the glimmers of lives, each one a droplet, each one soft and iridescent. He feels the weight of these memories, not heavy or burdensome, but gentle, like a lullaby sung in silence. Rick leans slightly forward, tracing the outlines with his gaze, recognizing echoes of choices he once made without thought, kindnesses he overlooked, and fears he carried quietly. The planet does not judge.
It merely reflects, offering understanding without expectation.
Morty feels a warmth rise within him, a gentle settling that mirrors the ebb and flow of the cloud ocean beneath their feet. Time here is soft, almost imperceptible. Each breath, each movement stretches in slow arcs like the waves themselves. Morty closes his eyes for a moment, feeling the pulse of the planet beneath him, sensing the mist being's quiet observation. The air is infused with a subtle light, a soft glow that illuminates without glare, casting gentle shadows that sway like whispered memories. Rick remains beside him, quiet and reflective, a rare pause in the ceaseless motion of his usual thoughts. Morty feels the intimacy of this shared stillness, a silent lesson in noticing without intrusion, understanding without interference. The mist drifts closer to Morty, curling around him in delicate spirals, and he feels a profound sense of acceptance wash through him. Each droplet seems to carry not just sorrow but resilience, a quiet affirmation of the endurance of experience. Morty breathes slowly, letting the calm of the planet sink into him, letting empathy bloom in the gentle understanding that the universe holds even the smallest sorrows with reverent care. Rick watches, his gaze softening further, as if recognizing in Morty the quiet growth that comes from presence, observation, and a willingness to feel alongside the world. Eventually, they step back from the cloud ocean, but the sense of connection lingers. Morty realizes that empathy is not about solving, not about changing, but about holding space, holding the subtle, fragile truths of life with quiet reverence. The mist being drifts away slowly, leaving behind only its soft glow and the faint pulse of understanding. Rick nods slightly, a subtle acknowledgement that growth can be gentle, quiet, and entirely without fanfare. Morty smiles faintly, sensing that the lesson of this place, the lesson of listening and feeling, will linger long after the clouds drift away. As they board the ship once more, Morty looks back at the undulating ocean of clouds, letting its rhythm echo in his chest. He senses a calm wisdom in the gentle motion, a reminder that the universe holds both sorrow and care in equal measure, that every tear, every quiet memory contributes to the tapestry of understanding. Rick closes the door softly, the hum of the ship blending with the distant pulse of the planet. Morty leans back, eyes half closed, feeling the gentle imprint of empathy, reflection, and quiet awe as they drift once more into the slow, unhurried expanse of space. They arrive in a dimension suspended in soft, floating light where gardens of abandoned inventions grow like delicate, iridescent flowers. Each creation hums quietly with a memory, a story of thought and intention left unfinished. Rick steps carefully, his hands hovering over the blossoms of machinery as if afraid to disturb the fragile recollections they carry. Morty follows, noticing the subtle change in Rick's demeanor, the sharp edge of impatience softened into gentle contemplation. The world is serene yet vibrant, a quiet reflection of ideas long forgotten but still alive, pulsating faintly with potential. Every sound is muted, every color softened, bathing the scene in a dreamy twilight that feels both alien and intimately familiar. Rick touches one small invention, a delicate contraption that seems to quiver under his fingertips. A wave of memory washes over him, soft and silent, carrying the echoes of a project he once dismissed as meaningless. His eyes linger, reflecting the gentle glow of the surrounding garden. Morty watches quietly, sensing the rare stillness in Rick, the rare absence of distraction or chaos. There is a warmth in the way Rick's expression softens, a subtle acknowledgement of forgotten care, of effort once overlooked. The inventions hum lightly, almost as if recognizing his attention, resonating with gentle vibrations that fill the air with quiet presence. Morty wanders among the floating garden, his fingers brushing the edges of glowing gears and twisted metal petals. Each touch evokes not a thought, but a feeling, a quiet sense of possibility, of paths explored and paths left behind. He imagines the life of each invention, how it once sparked a moment of hope, curiosity, or ingenuity. The garden does not judge or critique. It only exists as a gentle archive of creativity, a sanctuary where the remnants of past intentions grow in silence and beauty. Rick moves beside him, noting the way light pools around Morty's hands, illuminating his face with soft reflections of curiosity and empathy. The air carries a subtle fragrance, a mixture of metal and dew, grounding the scene in sensory calm. Morty listens to the faint hum of the inventions, each vibrating softly, echoing with the gentle pulse of ideas and memories. He feels the depth of patience required to inhabit such a place, the quiet understanding that sometimes value exists not in completion, but in presence and attention. Rick's eyes soften as he observes Morty, realizing that the young man beside him is absorbing more than mechanics or science. He is witnessing the quiet care, the hidden intention, and the latent beauty in moments left unfinished. Rick touches another invention, a small, luminous device with intricate gears, and remembers the hands that shaped it, the excitement that sparked it into being. The memory is not heavy nor filled with regret. It is tender, a quiet recognition of effort and possibility. Morty senses this subtle shift in Rick, the way his movements slow, how his breaths lengthen and deepen. There is no urgency, no push to fix, no frantic energy, only the gentle rhythm of reflection. The floating garden seems to respond, the soft glow of inventions pulsing lightly as if acknowledging the attention, the recognition, and the shared presence of both Rick and Morty. They pause in the center of the garden, surrounded by suspended creations that shimmer like starlight caught in dew. Morty notices a tiny contraption shaped like a star, its glow faint but steady, and he imagines the hands that built it long ago. Rick kneels beside him, pointing out the subtle imperfections that make each piece unique, each an artifact of effort and care. Morty realizes that the garden is not only about invention, it is about memory, intention, and the quiet grace of creation that persists even when abandoned. The space is filled with a gentle resonance, the faint vibration of lives lived in curiosity and the soft pulse of potential still waiting. Morty reaches for another small object, letting it hover between his palms, feeling the gentle hum of its existence. He senses not only its function, but the echo of attention that once brought it to life. Rick watches him quietly, a subtle smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, a rare softness in his eyes that acknowledges Morty's quiet understanding. The garden surrounds them in a cocoon of calm, a place where past efforts are honored, where reflection is the only requirement, and where silence itself carries lessons of care, patience, and appreciation. The sun, or what feels like a soft, celestial glow, dips slowly behind floating clusters of inventions, casting long, gentle shadows and illuminating the garden with tender amber light. Morty feels the warmth of understanding seep into him, the realization that growth is not always loud or visible, that attention, care, and reflection are powerful in their quiet ways. Rick stands brushing faint dust from his hands, and Morty senses that even the man who has traveled through chaos, universes, and endless inventions is learning the value of stillness, observation, and gentle recognition as they prepare to leave the floating garden. Morty glances back at the suspended creations, their soft glow mirrored in his eyes. He understands that even the moments we abandon, the ideas we set aside, hold quiet significance, and that the act of noticing, reflecting, and feeling is itself a form of growth. Rick moves beside him, walking with a measured calm, his gaze gentle, acknowledging the subtle lessons that the garden has shared. Together they ascend back into the ship, carrying with them the warmth of quiet insight, the rhythm of stillness, and the soft understanding that every small effort, every gentle intention leaves a mark on the world, even when it seems forgotten. Morty steps lightly into a softly lit glade, where the air hums with a gentle warmth that feels like a familiar embrace. The trees sway with a quiet rhythm, their leaves shimmering faintly as if carrying hidden memories in every motion. Before him stands a being entirely luminous, delicate, unassuming, a presence that feels like both a guide and a whisper of conscience. Morty instinctively senses that this figure is not here to command or instruct, but simply to exist alongside him and Rick, offering quiet companionship. Its glow pulses slowly, in time with the ambient hush of the glade, and Morty notices that his own breathing slows in response, each inhale and exhale aligning with the gentle rhythm of presence. Rick initially dismisses the luminous figure with a faint wave of his hand, an almost unconscious reaction of a man trained to solve problems rather than observe them. Morty watches him, curious but patient, sensing the subtle tension between Rick's habitual restlessness and the soft invitation of quiet company. The being floats nearer, its light neither intrusive nor overwhelming, just steady and calm, like a bedside lamp that fills the edges of a shadowed room. Morty feels the quiet power of its presence, the unspoken reassurance that sometimes the greatest wisdom is in stillness, in observation, and in the gentle act of simply being. The glade stretches infinitely, with faint pathways of glowing mist curling around delicate flowers and slender trees. Morty notices that the air vibrates with soft echoes of forgotten thoughts, almost imperceptible, as if the world itself is humming in acknowledgement of presence. The luminous being gestures slowly, subtly, encouraging attention to small details. The curve of a branch, the flutter of a leaf, the soft pulse of light along the ground. Morty follows these cues instinctively, letting his mind drift with the rhythm of observation, allowing understanding to arrive not through words, but through the quiet communion of attention. Rick remains still, leaning against a tree with a rare softness in his posture. Morty watches the subtle changes in him, the easing of tension in his shoulders, the relaxation of a face usually drawn tight with calculation and sarcasm. For the first time in many journeys, Rick does not seek to dominate the space, to solve, to invent, or to escape. Instead, he notices, he absorbs, he witnesses, and Morty senses that the luminous being has achieved something remarkable. It has invited him into presence without demand. The light around them responds, glowing gently, as if acknowledging the shared stillness and the subtle harmony now threading through the glade. Morty steps closer to the being, curious and unafraid, and feels a warmth that is not heat, but a kind of quiet reassurance, a soft affirmation of being seen and understood. The figure radiates calm in a way that Rick cannot dismiss, a subtle reminder that not all truths require confrontation, that some lessons arrive quietly through observation and reflection. Morty imagines that this being has always existed at the periphery of Rick's mind, a silent companion waiting for recognition, and he realizes that growth can arrive through patience and gentle attention just as much as through action. The luminous figure moves slowly, circling around Rick and Morty in fluid arcs, tracing patterns in the air that glow faintly, almost like handwriting left in mid-air. Morty notices that each movement seems to draw something out of Rick. A recognition, a softening, a moment of reflection on choices made, kindnesses ignored, and fears quietly held. Morty stands silently beside him, feeling the subtle shifts in the man he has watched grow and falter and love and hurt. The glade responds, the leaves shimmering and the flowers pulsing in quiet rhythm, as if acknowledging that attention, presence, and care are forms of progress just as profound as any invention or adventure. Rick finally reaches a hand toward the luminous being, hesitating only for a heartbeat before his fingers brush its soft glow. There is no explosion, no drama, only a gentle acknowledgement of presence and connection. Morty senses the significance without needing explanation. That even someone like Rick, who has traversed infinite worlds and faced chaos untold, can learn the subtle power of stillness, empathy, and attention. The luminous being pulses gently in response, its light reflecting in Rick's eyes, a quiet mirror of understanding and calm. The air seems to stretch, elongated and spacious, carrying soft motes of luminescence that drift lazily around them. Morty feels a sense of time suspended, a rare pause where past, present, and potential futures coexist in quiet harmony. The glade hums softly, the rhythm matching the pulse of his own heartbeat, and Morty realizes that this moment, small, luminous, unassuming, is a profound lesson in noticing, in waiting, and in valuing presence over action. Rick exhales slowly, a long, quiet breath that seems to release some measure of tension he had carried for lifetimes, and Morty feels a warmth that is both personal and cosmic, the soft imprint of understanding settling in his chest. As they leave the glade, Morty glances back at the luminous figure now hovering quietly in the soft light, and senses that the lesson of patience, reflection, and gentle companionship will linger long after the glow fades from sight. Rick follows, quieter than usual, carrying the subtle imprint of the encounter in his posture and gaze. Morty smiles faintly, feeling the shared calm, the intimate recognition, and the quiet growth that arrives not through confrontation or spectacle, but through observation, empathy, and the soft, patient presence of another being who waits without judgment. Rick and Morty drift into a dimension where the air itself seems to hum with faint, glowing vibrations. Light and sound mingle here, dissolving into one another, creating a space that is neither fully seen nor fully heard, but felt. Morty notices the faint colors blooming around him as he speaks aloud, each thought transforming into soft arcs of light, delicate and ephemeral. It is as if the very universe listens, translating quiet emotion into luminous shapes that pulse gently in the surrounding darkness. Rick watches, initially detached, yet even he cannot ignore the subtle beauty unfolding around them, a quiet resonance that seems to mirror feelings long suppressed. Morty experiments cautiously, whispering his thoughts into the luminous air. Each word transforms, unfolding into patterns of color that drift slowly across the space, like brushstrokes on a canvas of nothingness. The motion is fluid, serene, and entirely without urgency. He sees his memories reflected in this gentle glow, moments of small triumph, subtle fears, and tender kindnesses he had scarcely acknowledged before. Rick leans closer, his usual sharp eyes softening as he takes in the patterns, realizing that these silent illuminations carry meaning beyond science, beyond logic. They are the language of feeling, and he has not learned it fully until now. The colors twist and merge as Morty continues to speak, forming arcs and blooms that seem to dance to a rhythm only he can feel. Rick stands beside him, noticing the tiny variations, the subtle harmonies, and the quiet imperfection in every light. There is no harshness here, no criticism, only reflection, gentle and unassuming. Morty senses that the dimension itself mirrors not just his voice but his heart, a silent echo of every emotion he has carried quietly, every understanding he has absorbed. Rick shifts slightly, an almost imperceptible acknowledgement that this space offers lessons he cannot manufacture or manipulate, only receive. They wander slowly through the luminous expanse, stepping over streams of light that ripple softly beneath their feet. Morty feels the pulse of the universe beneath him, as if the world itself leans in to listen to the truths that sometimes cannot be spoken. The colors respond, faintly shifting and flickering, forming patterns of acknowledgement and warmth. Morty glances at Rick, noticing the rare softness in his posture, the subtle relaxation of shoulders usually tight with tension. Rick does not comment, does not analyze, but Morty understands that he sees, that he feels,
even if silently, and the space between them hums with quiet connection. Rick reaches out,
letting a single thought escape, a flicker of memory, and watches as it blooms into a cascade of soft golden light. Morty observes, heart quietly swelling, as Rick's usual skepticism is replaced by something almost like awe, a recognition of beauty that cannot be quantified. The luminous patterns drift around them, intertwining, overlapping, forming arcs of quiet dialogue without words. Morty feels a sense of intimacy, a profound understanding that sometimes the deepest communication is unspoken, experienced in shared presence, and reflected back by the gentle environment that cradles them. The colors pulse with increasing subtlety, softening into warmer shades as Morty closes his eyes for a moment, listening to the faint hum that threads through the dimension. He senses that the space itself responds to attention, that by noticing he contributes to the quiet creation of beauty, and that by observing Rick's reactions, he participates in the gentle evolution of understanding. Rick tilts his head slightly, eyes half closed, tracing the luminous shapes that float around them, absorbing what cannot be spoken: remorse, patience, curiosity, and kindness. Morty feels a surge of gentle awe at witnessing Rick learn to listen, even to the unspoken echoes of his own heart. Time flows softly, stretched like a slow tide, with no pressure to move, no deadlines to meet. Each moment lingers, each pattern of light gently imprints on their consciousness. Morty begins to understand that the universe sometimes teaches not through action, but by reflection, by making visible the patterns of emotion, empathy, and understanding that we rarely notice in ourselves. Rick leans slightly toward him, a subtle gesture of shared experience, an acknowledgement that in this silent, radiant space, growth and insight are unfolding quietly, imperceptibly, but profoundly. The light blooms and then settles, each color fading to a gentle glow, a soft sigh that lingers in the air like a memory remembered and cherished. Morty breathes deeply, feeling a warmth that extends beyond the moment, beyond the luminous dimension, into a sense of ongoing understanding, patience, and presence. Rick remains near, his gaze soft and reflective, a rare stillness holding him as he absorbs the quiet lesson of connection, empathy, and observation. Morty senses that this chapter of their journey, though intangible, is as essential as any adventure or invention. It is the cultivation of awareness, compassion, and the recognition of light in quiet spaces. As they prepare to leave, Morty watches the colors collapse gently, drifting back into the ambient darkness, leaving only the faint echo of their presence. He glances at Rick, who nods ever so slightly, acknowledging the experience without words, and Morty realizes that the silent communion has strengthened their connection, deepened their understanding, and opened a space for reflection that will linger far beyond this moment. Together they step back into the ship, carrying with them the soft imprint of wonder, empathy, and quiet awe, ready to continue their journey through the vast, unhurried expanse of the universe. Rick and Morty approach a bridge, suspended in a soft, endless expanse of clouds, stretching between dimensions that seem to fold gently into themselves. The bridge is neither solid nor entirely insubstantial. It hums faintly under their steps, each footfall sending ripples of light across the misty expanse. Morty pauses at the edge, feeling the subtle sway beneath him, and notices how the clouds glow softly, echoing the rhythm of his own heartbeat. Rick steps beside him, careful yet calm, and for the first time, Morty senses the absence of urgency in his companion. A rare moment where observation replaces invention, presence replaces action. As they begin to cross, each step emits a faint, luminous pulse, like whispers traveling through the air. Morty notices that the colors shift subtly, reflecting emotions he can feel but not name: curiosity, hesitation, awe, and a quiet sense of safety. Rick walks beside him, moving with unexpected softness, his usual swagger replaced by a measured grace. Morty realizes that the bridge itself is not simply a passage between worlds, but a gentle conduit for understanding, allowing each of them to confront inner insecurities without the need for words or force. The clouds sway beneath them in slow, meditative rhythms, the vastness of the space surrounding them creating a sense of timeless stillness. Rick reaches out toward a drifting wisp of light, watching as it reacts to his touch, stretching and folding in delicate arcs. Morty follows, extending his hand to another pulse of illumination, feeling it vibrate softly against his skin. Each interaction is subtle, quiet, and profoundly intimate. Morty senses that the bridge, the clouds, and the light are teaching him something essential. That emotional growth often comes through gentle attention, through the willingness to engage with small moments, and through the recognition of feelings that have always been present but seldom acknowledged. Rick's eyes reflect the gentle glow, and Morty notes the rare softness that appears there, a quiet acknowledgement of shared understanding. They pause midway, surrounded by a mist that blurs the boundaries between sky and bridge. Morty looks down and sees layers of clouds stretching infinitely, each one flickering faintly with light, like dreams suspended in space. Rick leans against the bridge's edge, silent, and Morty realizes that this moment is a meditation, an unspoken lesson in trust and presence. He notices how Rick's usual need to control has softened into careful observation, and he feels a quiet swell of respect and empathy for the man who has traveled infinite dimensions, yet is learning, slowly, to confront what resides within himself. The bridge hums softly beneath them, each note a reminder of balance, patience, and careful attention. Morty steps forward, letting the mist curl around his legs, feeling it embrace rather than restrict. The light pulses with each step, reflecting subtle changes in mood and thought. Rick matches his pace, stepping deliberately, the faint smile tugging at his lips, signaling that he, too, senses the significance of this gentle journey. Morty realizes that the crossing is both literal and symbolic. Each step forward mirrors an internal confrontation, a journey through insecurity, fear, and unspoken longing toward quiet acceptance and inner calm. As they continue, Morty begins to notice echoes of past adventures in the mist, faint traces of laughter, hesitation, and wonder, layered softly into the glow of the clouds. He senses that every memory, every choice, every fleeting emotion is preserved here, reflected in the bridge's luminous response. Rick observes the same patterns but differently, not with calculation or critique, but with a quiet acknowledgement of imperfection and growth. Morty feels the delicate rhythm of understanding forming between them, a bond forged not through words or action, but through the mutual experience of stillness and attention in this surreal, dreamlike landscape. Midway across, a gentle wind sweeps through, carrying with it faint whispers that echo softly in the ears, unintelligible but comforting, like half-remembered lullabies. Morty closes his eyes briefly, letting the sensation wash over him, feeling a calm assurance settle deep within. Rick leans closer, his hand brushing Morty's lightly, an unspoken gesture of trust and shared presence. Morty senses the magnitude of quiet growth here, that confronting insecurities, even without fanfare or confrontation, can be profoundly transformative, and that the simple act of walking together through uncertainty can carry immense emotional weight. The bridge continues, stretching into a horizon bathed in soft, celestial light, the clouds beneath them shimmering faintly as if acknowledging their passage. Morty feels a rare stillness, a sense that every step forward is mirrored by progress within, each pulse of light marking understanding and emotional presence. Rick walks beside him quietly, their reflections mirrored in the glowing mist, a soft acknowledgement that internal confrontation need not be loud or dramatic. Morty realizes that this journey, serene and suspended between dimensions, is as much about connection, patience, and reflection as it is about reaching a destination. As they reach the far end of the bridge, the glow of the clouds dims to a soft, comforting ambient light, signaling the close of this gentle passage. Morty turns to glance at Rick, noticing a subtle softness in his eyes, a quiet acknowledgement that the journey has changed them both. They step onto the solid ground beyond, carrying with them the warmth of shared understanding, the resonance of gentle reflection, and the calm assurance that facing one's insecurities can be done with patience, presence, and quiet grace. Rick and Morty step into a space where time itself seems to pause, suspended in a golden stillness that stretches endlessly around them. Every second feels luminous, weightless, as if the universe has exhaled and decided to linger in quiet reflection. Morty notices versions of himself scattered throughout the space, each asleep, peaceful, untouched by fear or doubt. Some are small and tentative, others older and wiser, yet all radiate the same soft glow of safety. Rick stands beside him, hand resting gently on Morty's shoulder, a rare gesture of quiet support that needs no words. In this suspended realm, Morty feels an unusual calm, the sort that comes not from control, but from the assurance that he is exactly where he is meant to be. The golden light pools around them, warm and diffuse, illuminating the contours of their faces without harshness. Morty observes how Rick's usual sharpness is softened here, the weight of endless calculation replaced by stillness and introspection. He realizes that the universe has provided a mirror, not for judgment, but for understanding, a space where the past, present, and potential selves coexist peacefully. Morty's chest rises and falls with a quiet rhythm, aligning with the gentle hum of the suspended time. Each heartbeat seems to echo across the space, a small affirmation of presence and resilience. Rick's gaze moves slowly over the floating versions of Morty, pausing on each one as if reading a delicate manuscript of possibility. Morty notices a subtle shift in him, an absence of the usual sarcasm or impatience. For once, Rick does not seek to fix, to manipulate, or to control. He simply witnesses. Morty feels the power of this stillness, the subtle reminder that sometimes the deepest guidance comes not from words or instructions, but from shared presence and quiet observation. The space hums softly in response, each version of Morty shimmering faintly, acknowledging that attention and understanding are themselves acts of care. As they move further into the golden expanse, Morty feels a gentle warmth encircle him, a sensation that is both intimate and cosmic. Each version of himself seems to radiate a quiet reassurance, a silent whisper that everything, fears, mistakes, hesitations, is contained, witnessed, and held without judgment. Rick tightens his hand slightly on Morty's shoulder, a small, grounding gesture, and Morty senses that in this stillness, forgiveness is possible, not loud, not urgent, but tender and profound. The golden light shifts subtly, responding to this shared understanding, creating patterns of warmth that ripple softly through the infinite space. Morty walks slowly among the sleeping selves, each one a reflection of choices made, chances missed, and moments cherished. He feels an unspoken dialogue forming, a conversation conducted entirely through presence, observation, and empathy. Rick follows silently, his movements measured, deliberate, as if he too is absorbing the lesson of the suspended time. Morty notices the absence of distraction, the purity of attention that this place demands, and feels a rare clarity. That inner confrontation need not be loud or dramatic to be transformative. The universe in its stillness offers insight in the softest of tones, and Morty begins to understand the quiet power of reflection. The golden stillness stretches further, each pulse of light gentle, like the slow ebb of waves caressing a quiet shore. Morty and Rick stop, standing side by side, and he senses that the greatest challenge Rick has faced in this place is not external, but internal. Every fear, every regret, every shadow of doubt is present, yet contained, acknowledged, and ultimately softened by the environment and by Morty's calm presence. Rick exhales slowly, a rare sound of release, and Morty feels the ripple of relief pass through him, here, in this suspended time. The unspoken acknowledgement of mistakes and the quiet act of self-forgiveness coexist peacefully, forming a gentle rhythm that hums softly in their chests. Morty glances at the sleeping versions of himself again, noting the subtle variations in posture, expression, and serenity. Each one, despite differences, shares a common thread of quiet safety and calm presence. Rick watches the same, recognizing, perhaps for the first time, that confrontation with self does not require combat, strategy, or triumph, only acceptance, observation, and patience. Morty feels a surge of understanding. The act of witnessing, of being present without demand or expectation, is a powerful kind of love, one that reshapes both giver and receiver. As they linger, the golden light slowly folds into itself, dimming gently, leaving behind a soft, warm glow that settles around them like a familiar blanket. Morty senses that the lesson of this timeless space will linger, infusing his mind and heart with a quiet confidence, a trust in himself and in the rhythm of life. Rick loosens his hand from Morty's shoulder but remains close, a subtle acknowledgement that connection can be maintained in silence, through attention and care alone. Morty breathes deeply, feeling the calm imprint left by the stillness, and understands that they are leaving not with answers, but with a gentle sense of comprehension and peace that words could never fully convey. Together, they step away from the floating selves, carrying the resonance of the golden space within them. Morty feels a quiet joy, a serene awareness that inner confrontation has been met not with struggle, but with calm reflection, empathy, and the gentle presence of someone who sees and understands. Rick walks beside him, quieter than usual, his gaze soft, reflecting a subtle transformation born not of triumph, but of awareness, patience, and the tender acknowledgement of all that they have been and all they are becoming. The universe shifted softly as Rick's latest experiment spiraled gently into the unknown, the kind of quiet chaos that had always fascinated him. Gravity itself began to sway, like a dream unspooling slowly, unhurried and deliberate. Morty felt the familiar tug of unease, but this time it was different. Not fear, but curiosity mingled with awe. Around them, planets and moons drifted like lanterns caught in a cosmic river, their motion serene rather than chaotic. Each orbit seemed deliberate, a slow dance orchestrated by forces unseen but intuitively understood. Rick and Morty stood at the center, their feet suspended above a plane that shimmered with soft light, observing as the universe itself appeared to dream. Morty's eyes widened slightly, not in alarm, but in quiet fascination. The stars pulsed in tandem with the drifting planets, a gentle rhythm that mirrored his heartbeat. Rick, unusually still, allowed the phenomenon to unfold without intervention, hands resting lightly at his sides. Morty noticed the rare softness in Rick's expression, a pause in his usual ceaseless calculation. It was as if, for a fleeting moment, the universe had become a mirror of their inner states. Contemplative, calm, and unhurried. Morty could feel the gravitational pull, not downward, but inward, toward the quiet center of awareness where fear and doubt softened into understanding. The drifting planets created soft arcs of light, bathing the space in warm hues of amber and soft silver. Morty stretched his hands toward the glow, feeling it ripple across his skin like a gentle caress. Each motion of the cosmos seemed deliberate, a lullaby sung without words, resonating with the quiet pulse of thought and emotion. Rick watched Morty, seeing him open to the experience, and something in him shifted imperceptibly. The usual insistence on control and immediacy had softened into observation, allowing the rhythm of this dreamlike cosmos to guide their reflection rather than their panic. Morty took a deep breath, exhaling slowly, and noticed how even the smallest gestures of the drifting planets seemed meaningful. A moon passing just above his head mirrored the gentle arc of his own curiosity. A distant star flickered faintly, reminiscent of moments he had overlooked, yet now recognized with gratitude. He felt a profound connection not only to the cosmic spectacle around him, but to Rick, who stood quietly beside him. In that silence, Morty understood that true awareness often emerges not through confrontation or challenge, but by observing and allowing the universe and oneself to move in harmony. Rick stepped closer, his hand brushing lightly against a floating mote of light. It shimmered softly, bending and refracting into subtle patterns that echoed memories, choices, and quiet lessons learned. Morty followed suit, letting his fingertips trace the gentle arcs of illumination, feeling the weight of infinite possibilities settle into calm acceptance. They moved together without words, their shared experience quiet but deeply resonant. Morty realized that this was not a test, not an experiment in the traditional sense, but a space for reflection, a pause in the endless rush of existence where observation became understanding, and understanding became peace as gravity continued to dream. The planet's slow motion evoked waves like gentle tides lapping against a familiar shore. Morty closed his eyes for a moment, sensing the pulse of the universe through his body. Rick, for the first time in a long while, allowed the rhythm to wash over him, quieting the constant hum of invention and calculation. Morty felt a sense of intimacy in the shared silence, a profound awareness that growth, reflection, and understanding are often silent processes, moving at the pace of perception rather than action. The universe, it seemed, simply wanted to rest, and by observing, they could rest with it. The drifting planets cast long, soft shadows that intertwined with shimmering arcs of light. Morty noticed shapes forming, abstract and gentle, each one reflecting not just the cosmos, but moments of care, subtle kindness, and empathy he had witnessed and received. Rick observed them as well, his usual detachment giving way to quiet contemplation. Morty felt the significance of the moment settle in his chest. The universe's dream mirrored the quiet journeys they had taken, inward, outward, and between one another. And in the rhythm of cosmic rest, he recognized a new kind of understanding. Rick finally spoke, softly, almost inaudibly. "It's peaceful," he said, and Morty smiled, realizing that even Rick could acknowledge serenity without caveat or explanation. Morty's eyes lingered on the drifting planets, on the soft arcs of light, and he felt the tug of connection, compassion, and wonder resonate through him. Time seemed suspended in that quiet recognition, each beat a gentle affirmation that stillness and observation were as vital as adventure and action. They had witnessed the universe itself dreaming, and in doing so, discovered a mirror of their own hearts. Quiet, reflective, and infinitely patient, the gravity gradually settled, the planets resuming their usual paths with gentle imperceptibility. Morty and Rick remained for a moment longer, absorbing the afterglow of the experience. Morty felt a lingering warmth, a quiet certainty that growth often arrives in subtle, undemonstrated ways. Rick's posture remained relaxed, his gaze soft, signaling a rare openness that transcended words. Together, they prepared to leave, carrying the resonance of this dreamlike cosmos with them, a quiet lesson that reflection, empathy, and gentle presence could guide them as powerfully as any invention, plan, or action ever had. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Rick's eyes grew heavy mid-flight. The ship hummed steadily beneath them, its engines a gentle lullaby against the soft backdrop of stars. Morty glanced over at Rick, noticing the rare stillness settling into his usually restless posture. The man who had tamed dimensions, outrun dangers, and engineered the impossible was finally succumbing to sleep, a quiet surrender that felt both strange and comforting. Morty's chest filled with a gentle warmth as he realized he would be the one guiding the ship through dawn, not with fear or panic, but with calm attention and quiet presence. The cockpit glowed softly from the ship's instrumentation, casting subtle lines of light across Morty's face. He exhaled slowly, feeling the steady hum resonate within him, grounding his awareness. Each star outside the window reflected faintly in his eyes, like distant memories shimmering in motion. Morty's hands rested lightly on the controls, not gripping but guiding, a partnership in which trust replaced tension. He watched Rick breathe steadily, the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest, a quiet cadence that reminded Morty of all the times he had been guided, protected, and challenged by the same figure who now rested beside him. As the ship drifted gently through the darkened expanse, Morty noticed the subtle shifts in the stars. Light bent softly around the edges of planets, reflecting in trails that seemed to follow the ship's path like ribbons of memory. He allowed himself to imagine every adventure they had shared, each one unfurling in slow motion against the infinite night. Morty's thoughts were quiet, contemplative, each one a soft brushstroke on the canvas of memory. The absence of urgent alarms, the silence of the sleeping ship, and the gentle cadence of the cosmos combined to create a profound sense of calm. Morty's eyes flicked over to Rick again, and he felt a gentle awe at the man who had taught him chaos, brilliance, and the strange poetry of the universe. Here, in the muted glow of dawn approaching, Rick's usual restlessness was absent, leaving only the quiet essence of him. A man who had carried countless worlds in his hands, now allowing himself the vulnerability of sleep. Morty realized that this was a rare gift, not just for Rick, but for him as well, a chance to witness stillness in someone who had always been motion, a chance to inhabit patience and reflection without the usual rush of danger or necessity. The ship's course traced a gentle arc above a planet that glimmered faintly below, oceans reflecting the faint light of a distant sun. Morty allowed himself to imagine the world beneath them, quiet and unhurried, as though the universe itself had paused to honor this small, tender moment. He thought of all the adventures left unspoken, the lessons embedded in fleeting gestures, and the quiet ways in which Rick had shaped him, through both chaos and care. Morty felt a soft pride, a recognition that guiding the ship through this gentle dawn was not an act of control, but a continuation of the trust and understanding that had grown between them over countless experiences. Each movement Morty made was deliberate but unforced. The ship responded with a fluid grace, as if acknowledging the shared stillness between the pilot and the sleeping figure beside him. Morty's breath synchronized with the faint hum of the engines, creating a meditative rhythm that echoed the quiet heartbeat of the universe outside. He allowed himself to notice the small things, the way the light reflected off Rick's lab coat, the subtle curve of his mouth in sleep, the faint scent of starlight lingering in the cabin. These details became anchors, grounding him in both the present moment and the long continuum of memory that had brought them here. As the dawn light slowly crept along the horizon, Morty felt a profound shift within himself. He had piloted the ship not to escape danger, not to seek adventure, but simply to be present, to honor the quiet trust between himself and Rick. In that gentle responsibility, Morty recognized the subtle transformations that had been taking place over countless journeys. Patience, empathy, and the capacity to witness without interference. The rising sun painted the clouds beneath them with soft golden hues, casting the ship and its occupants in a gentle glow that seemed to whisper of hope, understanding, and the beauty of small, mindful acts. Morty allowed himself to linger in the moment, savoring the rare calm that accompanies growth and reflection. He glanced at Rick one last time before turning his gaze outward, feeling the weight of shared experiences settle softly into memory. The ship moved steadily, the stars fading slightly as dawn brightened the sky, yet the glow of the moment remained within Morty, a quiet reminder that growth and care often occur in silence, in the spaces between movement and thought, in the stillness of being present. And as the sun rose higher, illuminating the horizon with gentle warmth, Morty realized that he was no longer just following Rick. He was accompanying him, honoring him, and, in doing so, embracing his own journey. One of quiet courage, reflection, and the calm joy of witnessing someone he loved finally still. The soft hum of the ship, the warmth of the golden light, and the tender weight of understanding created a memory that Morty would carry forever. A gentle testament to growth, patience, and quiet heroism. Rick found himself in a space that felt neither fully here nor entirely elsewhere, where dimensions folded slowly around him like gentle waves of light and shadow. The air shimmered with quiet luminescence, the kind of glow that doesn't demand attention but settles softly in the corners of perception. Morty remained near, walking beside him with measured steps, observing the subtle undulations of this place without fear. The folds of space seemed to echo the rhythm of Rick's own inner world, pauses, hesitations, unspoken regrets, all enfolded in the gentle embrace of something larger than either of them. It was a quiet reminder that the battles we carry within are often mirrored in the spaces we traverse, waiting to be noticed with soft curiosity rather than confrontation. Each step Rick took along the luminescent corridors felt deliberate, yet unhurried. Morty watched the light bend and twist, illuminating moments from the past, echoes of laughter, fragments of mistakes, small kindnesses he had overlooked. The walls themselves seemed to hum softly, as if the memories contained within them were breathing, alive, with quiet awareness. Morty noticed the subtle shifts in Rick's posture, the slow deepening of his breath, the way his eyes lingered on shadows without seeking to dispel them. In this slow, meditative pace, Morty began to understand that confronting oneself does not always require drama or upheaval. Sometimes it simply requires presence, patience, and the gentle act of noticing. Rick paused before a corridor that glowed slightly brighter, its walls reflecting moments of choices he had long avoided. Morty stepped closer, not speaking, offering his quiet presence as a companion rather than a guide. The light seemed to respond, pulsing softly in time with their breaths. Rick's fingers traced the edges of the glowing surfaces, hesitating over memories that carried both regret and tenderness. Morty could feel the weight of unspoken stories, yet there was no urgency here, only a sense of inevitability, that all the parts of oneself, even the shadows, could coexist peacefully when approached without fear. The folds of dimensions shifted again, revealing corridors lined with faint reflections of people Rick had loved, lost, or hurt. Morty noticed the subtle warmth radiating from these echoes, a quiet acknowledgement of connection that persisted despite mistakes. Rick's gaze softened as he observed them, a small exhale of recognition slipping past lips that rarely allowed vulnerability. Morty stood beside him, sensing that this quiet support, this simple act of companionship, was allowing Rick to meet himself fully, without the shields of sarcasm or invention. Each step through the labyrinth felt like a gentle surrender, a recognition that acceptance often comes in silence, in the soft folding of awareness into understanding. As they moved deeper, Rick's reflection in the glowing walls became less distorted, more aligned with the man Morty had come to know. Brilliant, flawed, yet capable of tender awareness. Morty could feel the space around them slow further, the luminous corridors expanding into vast halls that echoed softly with memories. Each sound, each shimmer of light seemed designed to nurture introspection rather than provoke action. Morty realized that the greatest lessons often arrive in moments when one is not seeking them, when observation alone guides understanding, and when the quiet between movements carries more weight than any words could. Rick paused again, standing before a mirror that reflected not who he had been, but who he was becoming. Morty observed silently, aware that the journey they shared was not about altering the past, but integrating it, letting it rest within the gentle structure of memory. The mirror glowed softly, a warm and inviting light that seemed to say, "All that you are, all that you have been,
can exist together without judgment." Morty felt the resonance of the moment settle in his chest.
a slow heartbeat of recognition, empathy, and acceptance. The corridors hummed faintly, responding to the calm energy they brought with them, a gentle reinforcement of presence and reflection. For the first time in a long while, Rick allowed the stillness to envelop him fully. There was no hurry, no urgency to fix, to invent, or to escape. Morty's proximity, his quiet attentiveness, served as a tether, reminding Rick that growth need not be solitary or confrontational. The space itself seemed to breathe with them, a living lullaby of light and shadow, holding all the fragments of experience gently and without demand. Morty sensed that this moment would linger far beyond the corridor's end, a quiet imprint on the heart and mind, reinforcing the value of presence, empathy, and reflective calm. As they reached the center of the labyrinth, the light shifted subtly, revealing a space that was simultaneously intimate and vast. Rick's eyes softened as he met Morty's gaze, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, understanding without speech, connection without assertion. Morty felt a gentle peace settle over him, the kind that grows in shared silence, in quiet acceptance, in the steady rhythm of walking beside someone through the intricate folds of their inner world. The corridor hummed one final soft pulse as they turned to leave, the glow lingering like the last notes of a lullaby, a quiet reminder that introspection and companionship are as powerful as any invention or adventure. Together, they walked back through the folding corridors, carrying with them the subtle warmth of reflection, the gentle hum of understanding, and the calm assurance that growth is measured in quiet steps, observed moments, and the tender acknowledgement of all that one has been and is becoming. Morty glanced at Rick one last time, noting the serene calm that now colored his posture, and realized that the labyrinth of light had not only shown Rick who he was, but had also deepened Morty's own capacity for patience, empathy, and reflective presence. The glow of the corridors faded softly behind them, leaving only a sense of calm resonance that would linger long after the journey ended. Rick stood quietly in the soft glow of the folding dimensions, feeling the familiar tension within him loosen like morning mist. For years, he had carried shadows he didn't dare name, corners of himself he avoided, fragments of fear he masked with brilliance and sarcasm. But now, in this gentle, meditative space, the weight of all that apprehension seemed to settle into quiet understanding. Morty remained nearby, a steady presence, his eyes reflecting warmth and patience rather than worry. Rick noticed the difference in Morty's gaze, the unspoken assurance that he would not be judged for what he feared to face. It was a small miracle, subtle and profound, the kind that grows in silence rather than spectacle. Before him stood a version of himself he had long considered an adversary, a shadow that once carried threat, but now radiated calm. There was no tension in the air, no need for defense or confrontation. The light bent gently around the figure, casting soft reflections across the shimmering floor. Rick's chest lifted slowly with each breath, his shoulders releasing the rigidity of habitual vigilance. Morty observed quietly, feeling the resonance of Rick's realization settle like a soft exhale in the space between them. The shadow, once a source of fear, was now simply a reflection, a companion in understanding, a reminder that the internal battles we carry are often waiting for acknowledgement rather than conquest. Rick stepped closer to the shadow, his movements deliberate yet unhurried, feeling a tenderness that had been absent for years. Each step seemed to echo in the soft folds of the room, a gentle rhythm that matched the quiet pulse of his own heart. Morty's presence beside him was steady, a subtle anchor in the shifting glow of this reflective space. Rick extended a hand, not in challenge, not in assertion, but as an offering of acceptance. The shadow mirrored him, moving in harmony, and for the first time, Rick allowed himself to feel that he could exist fully. The brilliance, the flaws, the fear, and the compassion, all in quiet coexistence. Morty felt a soft warmth spreading within him as he watched Rick embrace this shadow. It was not a moment of triumph in the usual sense, no dramatic explosion of insight, no sudden declaration.
Instead, it was quiet, patient, and infinitely more profound.
The soft light bathed both figures in gentle luminescence, illuminating not only their forms, but the subtle emotional shifts that had taken place. Morty realized that growth and acceptance often arrive not with fanfare, but in these tender interludes in shared silence, and in the gentle acknowledgement of what has always been present. Rick's shadow seemed to breathe with him, a subtle rhythm of light and presence that mirrored his own. Morty noticed the tiniest movements, a relaxation of the jaw, a softening of the shoulders, the way the shadow's reflection seemed to pulse in quiet synchrony with Rick's breath. The realization that fear and understanding could coexist without conflict settled over Rick like a warm blanket. Morty felt the same calm ripple through him, recognizing that this intimate moment of acceptance was a gift not only to Rick, but to himself as well. It was the quiet magic of witnessing someone he loved finally meet themselves fully. Without judgment, without rush, time seemed to stretch and expand in this gentle space, allowing reflection to flow freely without interference. The luminescent walls pulsed softly, echoing the subtle cadence of their breathing. Rick's gaze lingered on the shadow, now a figure of acceptance rather than threat. Morty stepped closer, offering a small, reassuring smile, a gesture that needed no words. In that simple connection, Rick felt the culmination of countless journeys, lessons, and quiet revelations. The universe outside this meditative dimension could wait. Here, in this slow, reflective space, understanding and compassion reigned supreme. Rick finally exhaled fully, a long, unhurried breath that seemed to carry away decades of apprehension. Morty felt it too, a soft resonance that vibrated through the still air. The shadow receded slightly, not disappearing, but merging gently into the warmth of light that filled the room. Rick's posture softened, his mind unburdened by the spectre of fear, replaced with quiet assurance and subtle wonder. Morty observed, knowing that this moment, like so many others they had shared, would linger in memory. A touchstone for reflection, patience, and empathy in times yet to come. The quiet between them stretched, expansive and gentle, allowing the weight of unspoken understanding to settle fully. Rick looked at Morty, a small, faint smile tracing his lips, acknowledging the shared journey without needing to articulate it. Morty's heart swelled softly with love and admiration, recognizing the rare gift of witnessing growth in someone who had always seemed invulnerable. Together they allowed the space to hold them, the gentle light wrapping around both, the pulsing glow of acceptance lingering in the soft folds of this meditative dimension. As the light shifted subtly, casting elongated, warm reflections on the floor, Rick felt a profound calm he had not known for years. Morty stepped even closer, his hand brushing lightly against Rick's arm in an unspoken gesture of comfort and solidarity. The shadow had been embraced, the fear recognized and dissolved into quiet understanding. Morty felt the resonance of the moment echo in his chest, a heartbeat of calm, patience, and gentle acceptance. The universe for a moment felt aligned, mirrored in the soft luminescence and quiet harmony between them. Rick allowed himself one final, slow breath, fully absorbing the calm. Morty's gaze met his, warm and reassuring, and Rick knew that the shadows he had once feared could coexist with the light he had always carried. The meditative glow of the space settled into their bones, a quiet exhale of understanding, a soft affirmation that growth, reflection, and compassion are most profound when experienced in patience and gentle presence.
And in that stillness the moment held them, luminous and infinite, a quiet victory of heart over fear,
of acceptance over tension, of love over solitude. Rick returned to the lab, and the familiar hum of machines greeted him like an old, quiet friend. The space felt different now, not chaotic or urgent, but intimate, almost tender in its stillness. Shadows stretched softly along the walls, folding themselves around equipment and glass tubes, and Rick noticed the subtle shift in how he perceived them.
Everything felt alive yet calm, like the world itself had exhaled alongside him.
Morty trailed silently behind, his eyes scanning the gentle glow of instruments and the faint reflection of light across the polished floor. There was no need for words. The room carried its own quiet narrative, one that spoke of reflection, growth, and subtle transformation. Rick moved slowly among the machines, brushing his fingers along surfaces that had once symbolized frantic genius and restless energy. Now they were markers of time spent, moments experienced and lessons absorbed. Morty watched, noticing the way Rick paused mid-step, allowing his gaze to linger on small details that had gone unnoticed before. The soft hum of the lab resonated with a new rhythm, one that mirrored the calm pulse of Rick's heart. In that stillness, the lab became more than a place of invention. It became a sanctuary,
a gentle cocoon holding both past mistakes and quiet triumphs. Morty approached a console,
noting the subtle shifts in light as Rick adjusted the dials with careful deliberation. The machines responded not with sparks or frantic energy, but with soft, steady illumination, casting a comforting glow across their faces. Morty realized that this was a reflection of Rick's internal transformation, the frenetic chaos replaced by gentle awareness, the habitual restlessness softened by quiet reflection. He felt a warmth rise in his chest, a recognition that growth often arrives not in grand gestures but in small, deliberate moments of observation and care. Rick paused near the center of the lab, taking a deep breath that seemed to carry away the residue of countless inner battles. Morty noticed how his posture softened, the tension in his shoulders dissolving into something more expansive, more open. The shadows that once seemed to chase him now rested quietly, acknowledging his presence without demand. Morty understood that Rick's confrontation with his own fears and shadows had left him quieter, not diminished, but more reflective, more attuned to the subtleties of life that often go unnoticed in the rush of invention and adventure. They moved together through the space, each step deliberate, each glance carrying unspoken communication. Morty sensed the profound calm that had settled over Rick, the kind of quiet that cannot be forced, but emerges naturally from deep acceptance. The lab, once a theatre of urgency, now felt like a vessel of serenity, holding the weight of experience without pressure, offering the comfort of continuity and familiarity. Morty's eyes followed Rick as he paused by a workbench, observing the familiar tools, the scattered notes, the instruments that had shaped countless journeys. Now, everything felt gentle, infused with soft light and quiet meaning. Rick's hands rested briefly on a familiar device, and he allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Morty noticed the faint curve of his lips, the subtle exhale that seemed to release years of unacknowledged tension. In that smile, Morty felt the culmination of their shared journey, the quiet victories, the lessons absorbed, the tender moments of connection and understanding that had unfolded over time. The lab itself seemed to breathe with them, a living space reflecting the soft rhythm of heartbeats, the gentle unfolding of growth, and the quiet acceptance of all that had been and all that would continue. Morty moved closer, standing beside Rick in silence, and for the first time, the absence of dialogue felt profound rather than empty. Words were unnecessary here. The space itself spoke of reflection, of acceptance, of the quiet satisfaction that comes when one has faced shadows and emerged whole. Rick's gaze lingered on the softly glowing machines, and Morty understood that he was seeing not just the instruments, but the trajectory of their shared lives, the chaos, the mistakes, the laughter, and the moments of tenderness that had shaped both of them. The hum of the lab, the subtle flicker of light, and the gentle shadows created a rhythm that enveloped them, encouraging stillness and introspection. Morty felt the soft cadence of this environment settle within him, reinforcing the lesson learned on their journeys through strange dimensions, reflective spaces, and inner landscapes. Rick's confrontation with his fears had left an imprint not just on him, but on Morty, a quiet resonance of patience, empathy, and gentle understanding. As they stood together, the lab seemed to hold nothing in the way it once had. No urgency, no frantic motion, no restless energy. It was empty of chaos, yet full of presence, full of calm acknowledgement of the journeys that had brought them here. Morty glanced at Rick once more, sensing the subtle shift, the quiet reflection that comes not from victory, but from understanding, not from conquest, but from acceptance. The soft light cast warm reflections across both of them, and the lab itself seemed to exhale, folding them into the gentle embrace of familiarity, memory, and calm. In the silence, Morty realized that growth, reflection, and acceptance often arrive in subtle, unnoticed ways, quietly reshaping perception and presence. Rick's journey through shadows, reflections, and quiet confrontation had left him more attuned, more reflective, more at peace. Morty felt the warmth of this transformation like a gentle current, a soft reassurance that even the most restless minds can find calm, even the most chaotic hearts can rest, and that the spaces we inhabit, physical or emotional, can hold us gently when approached with patience and presence. Rick exhaled slowly, and Morty matched him, sharing in the quiet resonance that filled the lab. Machines hummed softly, shadows fell gently, and the world felt intimate, safe, and quiet. The confrontation with fears, the journey through reflection, and the acceptance of shadows had not ended with fanfare, but with the most profound of victories: stillness. Morty observed silently, aware that this calm, this soft light, and this quiet understanding would linger far beyond the lab, shaping every shared moment yet to come. Rick and Morty sat beneath a large window that glowed softly with the silver light of the moon. The night outside stretched wide and infinite, the stars blinking gently like distant memories whispering through space. The lab behind them, once a haven of noise and invention, now felt hushed, holding only their quiet presence. Morty leaned slightly against Rick's shoulder, and Rick, uncharacteristically still, allowed the warmth of the boy beside him to settle into his chest. There was no need for words here. The shared silence carried more meaning than conversation ever could. The universe itself seemed to pause, leaning in to listen to the gentle rhythm of two hearts at rest. The town below shimmered faintly in the moonlight, windows glowing like tiny lanterns in the dark. Morty's eyes followed them, noting how each light seemed to pulse with the quiet life inside. Families, creatures, memories. He felt the soft hum of connection, the gentle reassurance that life continued in calm cycles, in the unnoticed moments that hold profound significance. Rick watched him quietly, aware of the boy's observations, and a small, almost imperceptible smile curved his lips. It was not a grin of triumph or invention, but of understanding, a recognition of the subtle beauty in existence when approached without rush or judgment. The moonlight spilled across the floor, illuminating scattered objects they had once ignored in the chaos of experiments and adventures. A small, forgotten invention rested quietly on a bench, bathed in silver glow. Rick reached out, brushing it lightly with a finger, feeling the textures, the weight, and the history of its creation. Morty observed, sensing that the act was less about the device itself than about presence, reflection, and acknowledgement. Every object, every shadow, every shimmer of light seemed to carry a memory, a lesson, or a gentle reminder of growth. The quiet between them deepened, and the stillness became a vessel holding all the lessons of the journeys they had shared. Morty glanced back at Rick, noticing the subtle softness in his posture, the way his hands rested calmly on his knees, the faint relaxation of features that had long been locked in tension. It was a rare moment, and Morty felt privileged to witness it. The quiet of the night, the gentle illumination of moonlight, and the shared silence created a space where reflection could settle, where the weight of past regrets and unspoken fears could rest without judgment. Rick's presence, normally a storm of energy and brilliance, now felt like a gentle anchor, grounding Morty in the comforting rhythm of their companionship. Outside, a breeze whispered through the open window, rustling the curtains with a sound that resembled soft laughter or faint echoes of dreams. Morty let the sound wash over him, feeling the subtle connection between the universe and their small, intimate space. Rick seemed to notice it too, his gaze drifting toward the sky, lingering on constellations that blinked with familiar brilliance. Morty realized that this was not just observation, but participation, a quiet engagement with the cosmos that demanded nothing but attention and presence. The moonlight, the shadows, the soft wind all became part of their shared meditation, a gentle reminder of the vastness of the universe and the intimacy of the present moment. Rick spoke finally, his voice low and calm, almost a whisper. "You know, kid, it's nice being able to just be." Morty smiled faintly, leaning a little closer, feeling the weight of those words settle between them. There was no lesson to be taught, no advice to be given, only the affirmation that existence in its quietest forms can carry its own wisdom. Morty understood that the greatest victories were often internal, unmarked by applause or recognition, and that the shared act of simply resting together could be as profound as any adventure they had ever undertaken. The night deepened, stars pulsing gently in the vast expanse beyond the window. Morty felt a drowsy calm settle into his limbs, a reassurance that this stillness was enough, that presence and attention could carry more meaning than words or action. Rick's steady breath next to him became a lullaby of sorts, a soft rhythm of security and understanding. Morty closed his eyes briefly, letting the subtle warmth of Rick's presence, the quiet glow of the moon, and the infinite stretch of night fold into his consciousness. For once, adventure did not call. Discovery was not urgent. Reflection alone was enough. Time seemed to slow further, each second stretching with gentle weight, allowing the space between breaths to carry meaning. Morty felt a profound sense of peace, a recognition that the world outside would continue its orbit, that the quiet moments they shared would leave lasting impressions on heart and mind. Rick's gaze softened, his features calm, and Morty realized that the boy and the man, the mentor and the companion, had arrived at a shared understanding. No drama, no chaos, only the tender embrace of calm, reflective presence. The stars twinkled, softly, as though leaning closer to witness their quiet vigil. Rick's eyes closed, and Morty allowed his own lids to fall, feeling the gentle rhythm of the night wash over him. The moonlight glimmered across their forms, a soft affirmation of warmth, safety, and quiet understanding. The universe seemed to whisper to them, carrying the resonance of reflection, empathy, and calm across infinite spaces. In that moment, the lab, the town, and the cosmos became one gentle expanse, holding them in a shared experience of peaceful stillness and introspection. Morty shifted slightly, resting fully against Rick, feeling the faint pulse of warmth, the quiet heartbeat of shared presence. A soft exhale of contentment passed between them, unspoken, yet fully understood. The night continued around them, infinite and serene, a witness to quiet reconciliation, growth, and gentle companionship. The glow of the moon, the faint flicker of distant stars, and the hum of the universe itself became part of a lullaby that would carry them into calm sleep, embedding warmth and comfort into the marrow of memory. And in the silence, Morty felt the soft assurance of love and presence, the quiet understanding of shared journeys, and the deep, unhurried acceptance of what had been and what would continue. Rick and Morty sat together beneath the window, wrapped in moonlight, enveloped by reflection, and held by the gentle arms of night. The moment stretched indefinitely, peaceful and meditative, a soft punctuation to the trials, discoveries, and growth that had brought them here. Rick drifted into sleep in his chair, the soft hum of the lab fading into the gentle hush of night. Morty sat beside him, shoulders relaxed, hands resting lightly on his lap, feeling the rhythm of Rick's slow, even breathing. The moonlight poured through the window, bathing the room in a soft silver glow, reflecting off scattered instruments and softly polished surfaces. Shadows stretched gently across the lab, folding around familiar objects and embracing the quiet stillness. There was no urgency here, no clamor for invention or adventure, only the tender presence of shared calm, a space where two lives, chaotic yet intimately intertwined, could simply exist in harmony. The stars beyond the window pulsed faintly like tiny heartbeats of the universe itself. Morty's gaze lingered on them, the vast expanse reminding him of the infinite mysteries that had always surrounded their journeys. Yet tonight, the cosmos did not intimidate, it soothed. The endless constellations felt like gentle companions, quietly watching, quietly acknowledging, whispering soft reassurances across the distances of space and time. Morty let his thoughts drift, allowing memories of adventures, quiet revelations, and subtle lessons to rise and fall like gentle tides, each one carrying a soft echo of understanding and empathy. Rick's chair creaked slightly as he shifted, his hands resting loosely across his chest, and Morty noticed the peaceful curve of his lips. It was a small, almost imperceptible smile, one that spoke of relief, acceptance, and quiet satisfaction. Morty leaned closer, feeling the warmth of the man who had always been both mentor and companion, both flawed and extraordinary, a presence as vast and complex as the stars themselves. In the stillness, Morty understood that this quiet moment, the absence of action, the embrace of reflection, was one of the most profound experiences they had ever shared. The lab itself seemed to breathe along with them. Machines emitted a soft, even glow, their hums blending seamlessly with the muted rhythm of Rick's and Morty's presence. Each object in the room, bottles, tools, sketches, devices of wonder long forgotten, seemed to participate in this meditative calm, folding the chaos of previous days into a quiet order. Morty felt the weight of accumulated experiences ease from his shoulders, a soft reassurance that even the most complicated journeys could resolve into serenity if approached with patience. Acceptance and gentle attention. Outside, a faint breeze rustled the curtains, carrying the whisper of night across the lab. The sound was like a lullaby, soft and fleeting, weaving its way into their consciousness without demand. Morty let his eyes drift shut, inhaling the calm air and the quiet energy of the space around him. He imagined the stars outside leaning closer, echoing the subtle cadence of heartbeats, their distant light mingling with the soft glow of the lab to create an atmosphere of safety and comfort. Rick's presence beside him was steady and grounding, a constant reminder that even in the vastest, most mysterious reaches of existence,
intimacy and reflection could flourish. Rick's breathing deepened.
Slow and even, each exhale a punctuation of calm. Morty felt the resonance of those breaths ripple through him, a soft echo of security and belonging. The gentle luminescence in the lab shifted slightly, reflecting on instruments and surfaces with a subdued grace, reinforcing the quiet, reflective atmosphere. Morty allowed his mind to wander lightly, recalling the shadows they had faced, the reflections of fears and regrets, and the tender acceptance that had transformed them. All of it, the mistakes, the lessons, the quiet growth, seemed to settle into this space, a soft repository of memory and understanding. In the meditative stillness, Morty imagined the whispers of the stars, repeating softly, "You are enough." It was not a command, nor a proclamation, but a gentle assurance, carrying warmth and infinite patience. The words seemed to blend with the moonlight, the faint hum of the lab, and the subtle rhythm of Rick's breath, forming a lullaby that wrapped around them both. Morty felt the depth of the journey they had shared. The quiet confrontations, the reflections, the growth, all distilled into this one moment of unhurried peace. Rick stirred slightly, a soft sigh escaping him, unnoticed except by Morty. The boy shifted to rest his head lightly against the chair's arm, the subtle contact a silent gesture of companionship, comfort, and recognition. There was no rush, no expectation, only presence. Morty's thoughts drifted to all the times they had tumbled through chaos, laughed, argued, and discovered new worlds. Yet now, these recollections carried a soft serenity, cushioned by understanding and acceptance. Even the most turbulent adventures seemed to harmonize with the rhythm of quiet reflection, like waves settling after a long journey across the ocean. Time itself seemed to fold in on them, stretching and pausing with gentle elasticity. Morty felt the soft cadence of the moment, the lull of night and the glow of moonlight synchronize into a profound stillness. Rick's chest rose and fell, steady and reassuring, and Morty allowed the calm to seep through him completely. The lab, the moon, the distant stars, everything seemed attuned to a quiet rhythm, a gentle, patient heartbeat that cradled them both. In that suspended tranquility, the universe felt intimate, safe, and luminous, and the boy and the man existed together as a single, quiet reflection of love, understanding, and presence. As Morty's eyelids closed fully, a final whisper seemed to drift through the night.
As if carried by the stars themselves, "You are enough."
And all is well. Rick's soft exhale mingled with it, a quiet confirmation of everything they had learned and endured. The story of their journeys, shadows faced and lessons absorbed, dissolved into the hush of night. The lab, the moonlit sky, and the infinite universe held them gently, a final, tender embrace before dreams carried them into deep sleep. And, in that soft,
enduring moment, Morty and Rick existed simply,
entirely and peacefully. The universe watched in quiet understanding, and the night exhaled around them, a gentle testament to reflection, growth, and calm companionship. Thanks for spending this time with us. Sleep well?
Everything's going to be okay, man.